Alright, so we're going to talk about azaleas for just a few minutes. Okay, azaleas are members of the heath family, and they are essentially rhododendrons. Their genus name is rhododendron, and generally rhododendrons and azaleas are all lumped together. Azaleas, for the most part, or at least the ones that we think of as far as native azaleas, like flame azalea and pinkstra flower, which are both species that are native to Hickory Nut Gorge, these are deciduous. Okay, a lot of the rhododendrons and things that we're familiar with, such as gorge rhododendron and rose bay and catawba rhododendron, those are evergreen, so they don't lose their leaves. But both are related. So azaleas and rhododendrons, their genus is all rhododendron. Okay, so they're closely associated with each other. Now let's look at these flowers here just for a second. These are azaleas too. These are my personal azaleas that I have at my, well, it's now my old house. Okay, but I raised these from when they were just very small. Okay, but they've grown quite a bit over the last 20 years or so, and they look really good. Okay, some of them have already about quit flowering. Okay, then I've got some that are just now really starting to do their thing. Okay, but azaleas, these are all basically hybrids and ornamental versions of wild azaleas. Okay, and I really want to spend a little bit of time focusing on the flowers themselves. Okay, all azaleas and rhododendrons have 5-petaled flowers. Now sometimes you can see some ornamental varieties that will be double flowered, okay, such as this pink one here. This is double flowered. If you look at it, it actually has 10 of everything with the exception of the floral parts in the middle, okay, the stamens and pistils. I don't know how well you can see those, okay. Those are all located right here where my finger is, okay, but there's 5 stamens, okay, and a single pistil, and we'll look at that a little bit closer here in just a second. Okay, but 5 is the typical number for things that are in this family. Okay, now one of the interesting things about these are the colors. So you get lots of different colors. Okay, and the color, while we see it as attractive, is basically also something that it helps to attract a pollinator. So like in this case, bumblebees mostly are the pollinator for azaleas. There's a few honeybees that will also pollinate them as well, but they seem to be very suited towards having bumblebees pollinate them. Okay, and the reason that these bees are attracted to these flowers has to do with something that's very prominent on here, and I don't know how well you can see it, okay, but that's these little spots that you see here on these petals. Okay, now if you look very closely, okay, you'll see that it has these spots on it. Okay, these spots are called nectar guides. Okay, now nectar guides, and you can probably see them a little better on one of these other flowers. Okay, nectar guides basically tell that bumblebee or honeybee where it needs to go. So if you look, you can see the nectar guides right here. Okay, there's little darker spots there. Okay, nectar guides, while they look just like little red or purple spots to us, to a bumblebee, they look different. Okay, because these reflect ultraviolet light. We can't see ultraviolet light, but a bee can. So it looks like basically a runway at an airport that's all lit up, and it tells that bumblebee where it needs to go to find the nectar, which would be at the base of this particular petal. Okay, so that's really a neat mechanism that these flowers use to attract their pollinator. Okay, that nectar is very important because it provides energy for the bees to carry out their work. In the process of getting the nectar, they have to touch these stamens. Now stamens, okay, are two-parted, so the whole thing is a stamen. This little thing here that I'm putting my finger on, okay, the thing on the top at the end of the stamen is called the anther, okay, and the thing that holds the anther up is a filament, that long stem there. Okay, now if we look at the pistil, okay, which is this part right here, Okay, the pistil is connected to the ovary, which is at the base of the flower, down underneath where the petals connect to the flower stem. And the pistil is comprised of a style and a stigma. Okay, the style is the long part, okay, and the stigma is the thing on the end, okay, that you can barely see here in this video, okay. But pollen it gets onto the stigma, okay, and then that pollen tube will grow down into down the style and into the ovary, where it will then fertilize that flower. Okay, the whole thing here, these petals are called, the whole thing collectively are called the corolla. Okay, and underneath the petals you have these green things down here. Okay, I don't know how well you can see those there. That's the calyx, okay, which is the collection of sepals. Okay, and this is what we would call a perfect flower, because it has all of male and female parts, and it has petals and sepals. Okay, so it's very, very cool. If we go over here, we can look at this one. This one looks a little different. Okay, but if you also notice, it has the nectar guides as well. So if you look at this flower here, you see those nectar guides. Okay, there at the top of that petal. And my camera's not wanting to focus very well, but there it goes. But quite an interesting thing as far as how these plants use these nectar guides to bring the pollinator in. Lots of flowers are adapted in a similar way. So depending on what your pollinator is, or what you need for it to be, will determine the kind of, what could be the shape of the flower, could be other mechanisms that guide a particular animal or insect into the flower. So like for instance, a species called columbine, okay, which is a herbaceous species, they are designed to be pollinated by hummingbirds, okay, because they've got these long spurs that have nectar at the base, and that allows the hummingbird to stick its long beak in there and get the nectar. Nothing else is suited to be able to do that. So flowers are designed specifically for a certain type of pollinator, which is really neat. Okay, other members of this family that we may not necessarily think about are mountain laurel. That's also found in this family. The flowers look somewhat different than they do on these azaleas. Okay, some other things that are found in this family are blueberries. Also, they would have 5 petals, although those petals are fused in a little different way, and it don't quite look like these flowers, but they would have the same number of floral parts, okay, just like these, because they're all in the same family. Some other members of that family include Indian pipes, pine sap, sweet pine sap, and trailing arbutus. All these are found in the heath family. Okay, these are absolutely some of my favorites. Some of these are just really interesting. This red one in particular I find to be quite interesting, and it even has the nectar guides. You had to look much harder to see them, but again, because they are reflecting ultraviolet light, an insect would have no problem at all seeing those nectar guides. Here's a nice clump of the red ones here. Okay, if we look real close on this top petal there, you can just barely see those spots, those nectar guides. Okay, and I got carpenter bees that are working these. You see there, carpenter bee? And that's our pollinator, and he's trying to, I don't know what he's trying to do. Sometimes they will actually get drunk on nectar, okay, because it's so sweet and sugary. That's actually not an unusual thing at all. Something that I've also heard about these things, about the nectar guides, and I don't know if this is true or not, I think it would be something that would be worth researching, is I have heard that after all the nectar is depleted, that the spots no longer reflect ultraviolet light, almost as if they turn off. So it's almost like where when they are reflecting, they say eat it Joe's, okay, and the pollinator comes in there and gets the nectar from the flower. When all that nectar is gone, then that pollinator, basically the flower, says Joe's closed. So that's really an interesting thing, if that is truly the case. Watching this carpenter bee, I don't think he can figure out what he's doing. But really neat to watch him. I love watching bees work. He's trying to find the nectar on that particular one, because see, this one is double flowered, and so it has two sets of nectar guides. One on the inside set of petals, and the other one on the outside set of petals. But that's just kind of interesting what he's having a hard time. Oh, now he's finding the flower. Where's he going? Oh, yeah, he's stumped now. Very cool. So the azaleas. Remember, azaleas are rhododendrons, okay? But what we would call rhododendrons are not necessarily azaleas, okay? They all have the same scientific name, rhododendron, that's applied to them. Cool stuff.